So as Jordan indicated before I dive into my presentation, the Michigan Center for Truck Safety simulator over here, it's great. It's, I kind of call it an adult video game, but actually you shouldn't treat it like that. They can simulate pretty much anything, any situation, and all kinds of different driving situations. Do go over there and check it out. Also, one last ploy for the Michigan Center for Truck Safety, use them, utilize their resources. I use them all the time. I push companies, I push drivers, hey, yeah, that's a good point. Why don't you contact them? Maybe they can give you some outreach or some training. But utilize the Michigan Center for Truck Safety. It's there here in our state. Not every state has that resource, so you guys use that as trucking companies or drivers. Please do. Quick high-level presentation here. If you have questions after this presentation going forward, I'll have my email up there. You guys can reach out to me anytime, and I'll gladly try to assist you with any kind of regulatory help. Today we're going to touch on the Drug and Alcohol Testing Clearinghouse, the latest proposed rulemaking for the hours of service, some changes that are coming down, or some possible changes I should say. The electronic logging device, continued. It's been going on now for several years, so we're really rolling forward with it. We're about to start the final in compliance date here coming in December. And then personal conveyance, always like to bring that up. That's a hot topic. It's always, we get questions all the time about that, and it's not an easy topic, but I do like to talk about it. The off-site investigations and the investigations in general, when the FMCSA or our state counterparts, who we work very closely with, come out to your office and do a compliance investigation. We'll kind of touch that real quickly and how that would work. So the first and foremost, one of the real hot topics right now, everyone is aware of the Drug and Alcohol Testing Clearinghouse. Raise of hands if you've heard of it. Okay, good. That's a good sign right there. So this has been coming around since 2016, I believe the final rule was written, and now the compliance date that always seems so far away is now coming here in February of 2020. The Drug and Alcohol Testing Clearinghouse, and this is going to be a good thing. The industry and obviously our agencies really firmly believe this is going to impact safety tremendously. It's going to remove unsafe drivers. We all would agree that drivers that violate substance abuse policies or the drug and alcohol testing regulations should be removed off the road. It's be safer for all of us. Currently, today, prior to the Drug and Alcohol Testing Clearinghouse, there's a lot of loopholes, right? There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of times it's the driver reporting their violations or the driver admitting that they screwed up, that they popped positive on a test. It also requires motor carriers to contact previous employers if the previous employer is on the driver's application, and then the previous employer has to take the time to fill out the paperwork, then to send it. We have to deal with fax machines, we have to deal with email, there's a lot of contact, there's a lot of loopholes, there's a lot of breakdown that can take place currently with the process. Well, the Drug and Alcohol Testing Clearinghouse is not going to eliminate that, right? There's always a way to manipulate stuff. It's human nature. They're going to find a way. We're trying to reduce the chance of drivers lying or not being honest about what happened. Because let's be honest, it can happen. It's human nature. People do screw up too. The clearinghouse is going to help make sure that the driver is honest. If they mess up, if they pop positive, you can continue to drive. Your career's not over. But this clearinghouse is going to be very transparent. You're going to be able to see that this driver screwed up on this date, and here's the follow-up process. Here's what's going on. And oh, look, they did make it right. Now we can hire them. Now, me as a motor carrier who's hiring this driver, I've crossed my T's, dotted my I's, I did all my due diligence. Now I can hire him because the clearinghouse shows the whole process of what this driver did. So the clearinghouse, kind of like I was alluding to, it's going to report. It's going to be a actual place where it keeps all positive alcohol tests, all positive drug tests on file, and then it's going to indicate if the driver started the process and cleared themselves. Basically, I use the term made it right. They made their bad go right. They screwed up, now they made it right. It's going to be a place where companies can check and are going to be required to check during pre-employment hiring. A company will now be required to check this clearinghouse to make sure the driver is not in there, to make sure a driver doesn't have their name somehow listed in this clearinghouse. If they do, there's other steps that need to be taken. So the clearinghouse, again, is going to be a spot where it's going to hold all positive tests, all alcohol or drug, and it's going to keep the drivers from popping positive in one spot, company A, on a pre-employment, going down the road, and then now applying for another job because they cleaned up and not using the company A on their application, and just kind of job hopping. Well, this is now going to keep track of that. Again, it could be manipulated. Maybe everything can be manipulated, but it's going to be much harder, and it's going to help reduce that. So here's the timeline, real quickly, and I apologize about the size of the slides, and I know you have them in front of you too. They're not the biggest, but we try to put a lot of information on one slide. The big thing here is January 6, 2020. I think I said earlier February 2020, that's a different rule, but January 6th of 2020 is when the clearinghouse is starting. That's when it's starting, it's in effect. You see January 6th of 2023 is listed there. The reason that is there because starting January of 2023, we'll no longer have to do those previous employer checks, those ones where we email over, we reach out to the previous employers. Between those 3 years, between this January and 2023, we have to do both. We have to check the clearinghouse, and we're going to have to do the previous employer checks, okay? So that's the big thing there to know. Who will be responsible to use the clearinghouse? Pretty much everyone that's associated. Everyone you see here. I mean, everyone that has to do with the driver, hiring a driver, when the driver goes to get tested, everyone, if they're positive, the SAP, the consortium, the third-party administrator, whoever it may be, medical review officers, state driver's license agencies, they are going to refer to the clearinghouse to make sure a driver is not listed in there prior to renewing CDLs. Everyone's going to have their hand in on the clearinghouse. In this slide, I'm sorry, yeah, it's pretty small here, but I wanted to put a lot of information here, and again, it's in front of you. But what's going to happen for drivers? Drivers are going to register in the clearinghouse. Again, now, I shouldn't say again, I haven't touched on it yet, but the drivers only have to register in the clearinghouse if they need a full query done. So if you guys have drivers currently that are employed, they do not all have to go register in the clearinghouse. They only have to register if you guys have a new hire, they're going to have to register. The driver will have to register in the clearinghouse and provide consent to you guys as a company to do a full query. But current drivers do not have to register. That is a common question, and it's kind of a misbelief. People think that every driver has to register. Current drivers do not have to register right now. Drivers are going to be able to view their information. If a driver does want to view their information, they're going to have to be registered. But again, they probably only are going to view their information if they believe they're in there or if they know they're in there. So a driver would have to register if they're going to want access to their information. That's when they'd have to register. The drivers are going to have to provide consent in the clearinghouse. Again, so back to the new hire, if I'm a driver and I'm a new hire, I'm going to have to register because I have to provide full consent to my company that I'm trying to work for to do a full query of my name, my driver's license. Drivers, if they ended up violating Part 382 or Part 40 of the regulation, they do have to go into the clearinghouse and they have to select a SAP. They have to select a substance abuse professional because that driver's substance abuse professional is going to be now entering data as they're doing return to duty work. So again, right away, any current driver, they don't have to register at all. There's nothing that needs to be done right now for the drivers. If they're a current driver, not trying to get a new job, they don't have to register at all right now. Drivers will have the opportunity, again, now this is, if we're putting a driver's name out there in this clearinghouse, a driver does have the opportunity and the right, basically to contest if there's something in there. There is a way to do it in the clearinghouse if a driver believes that it wasn't reported properly. There is a regulation, Part 382-705. You don't need to know that. It's right in the clearinghouse website. But There is a way that motor carriers are required to report drivers. They have to do it properly. If drivers believe that they're improperly reported or inaccurately, something was inaccurate, the drivers can contest that in the clearinghouse. Employers. Employers are required to register. You do, as a motor carrier, you do need to register in the clearinghouse. You need to report drug and alcohol testing violations. You need to request the specific consent. Back to what I said, if you're hiring a brand new driver, you do need to get specific full consent from the driver, and that's all done in the clearinghouse, because you do have to do a full query of any new hires. Employers also need to designate their consortium or their third-party administrator in the clearinghouse. They can act on behalf of the carrier. They can put information about tests, return to duty, any of that stuff. They can act on your behalf in the clearinghouse, okay? So an employer will have to go in there and designate a third-party administrator. You need to report negative return to duty tests. I believe the consortium can do that for you also. And then you need to report the completion of a driver's follow-up testing plan. So I've got the biggest responsibility here is reporting the positives also, for sure. And then again though, if a driver starts to make it right, reporting that they're doing the right thing. We need to clear their name too. As much as we put their name out there in this clearinghouse, it can be made right and they can continue to work. This is their job, this is their livelihood. So we also have to clear their name too. Employers that have a US DOT number, all of you guys, any trucking companies in here anyway, you can register in the clearinghouse through the FMCSA portal. Now, I have not logged in, or I obviously haven't tried to register as a carrier, but I don't know if right now, the registration just opened, as we know, and we'll touch on that, but it just opened. I don't know if the portal right now is tied into that. I know that's the plan and that's how it's supposed to work. Yep.
It's tied.
It is working. Okay, so we have one person that did it. Okay, good. Good to know. Thank you. So just the different queries, and I talked about full query. I kept using the term full query. So pre-employment screening, a full query needs to be done. Full violation, all the details of any violation of pretty much if they're in the clearinghouse and what the violation was, where it stands, everything. That's what a full query, and that's where a carrier needs specific consent within the clearinghouse. They need consent from the driver to do a full query. And then there's the annual verification. As a motor carrier, we will be required to annually check the clearinghouse. We're checking just to see if there's a hit on a driver in the clearinghouse anywhere. They might work for someone else, and they all of a sudden got put into the clearinghouse when you didn't even know about it. So annually, we'll be required to do a check. This is a limited query. So your current drivers right now that you have, you will have to do an annual check in the clearinghouse, but you don't need consent in the clearinghouse. You do need consent like we get anyway right now before we do a previous employer check. You just need some written consent. It can be a consent that covers 5 years. They have, there's already something in our EDA package, our Educational and Technical Assistance package, a form that you can fill out. But there's going to be another form made available in the clearinghouse, an example. You can have just written consent, doesn't need to be in the clearinghouse, to do the limited queries. That's just a limit, that's just a check to see if Matt Fabry's in the clearinghouse. And if I am, then you have to do a full query, okay? So minimum, just annually you gotta do this limited query to see if their name is in the clearinghouse. Registration, this slide is out of date by about 2 days, so it's open. It's registration right now is open, so go ahead and start registering. I would highly recommend it. The clearinghouse website is right there. There's so much good information in there. I don't know about you guys, I love frequently asked questions. I don't want to sit and read a bunch of paragraphs and all, but this just has like 50 frequently asked questions, breaks it down by topic. Go to the clearinghouse if you have a question, and I'm pretty sure it'll be right there. It breaks it all down for driver questions, for carrier questions, all kinds of real simple, easy questions and answers, for sure. And if you do have any more questions, you can contact, there's a website right there, it's on your slide, it's a clearinghouse at dot.gov. That's what the specific question, if the frequently asked question won't answer what you have. So the hours of service, moving on here. The hours of service notice of proposed rulemaking. So late in 2018, we put out an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. That's basically just a notice that, hey, we're about to put a notice of proposed rulemaking out. And we're really looking to get comments. Well, just as of recently, we put out the final, or not final, I shouldn't say, but we put out a notice of proposed rulemaking. We put out the actual notice of proposed rulemaking for upcoming hours of service changes. Touching briefly on some of these, they're pretty straightforward. And if any questions, just jot it down and we can talk about it. So the short haul exception. We all know what the short haul exception is. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But what they're talking about is making the carriers, the drivers that do the short haul time card, let's call them time card drivers, local drivers, don't do a logbook, don't do an ELD. Extending it from 12 hours, we know that it has to be a 12-hour shift currently, extending it to 14. They're going to extend it from 12 to 14, just make it a 14-hour day for the short haul drivers, and then extending the 100 air mile radius, making it a flat one, everyone having a 150 air mile radius. So that's the first one. Currently, non-CDL drivers can do the 150 air mile radius. The 14 is brand new, would be brand new to everyone. So that's the first proposed change. The adverse driving conditions exception. Currently, for adverse driving conditions, we can extend our driving time. We can extend our driving window from 11 to 13 hours. We can extend it 2 hours, but it does not touch our 14-hour rule. Well, just that doesn't make much sense to me. It doesn't make much sense to our agency. So now we're trying to extend the 14 also. So you could extend the 2 hours on the 14. You can extend 2 hours on the drive time. So now you're looking at on adverse driving conditions. If you're using this exception, you're looking at a 13-hour drive time, a 15-hour day. So if they see something in the road, they could potentially pull off, sit, wait for it to clear, hang out, get a bite to eat, and whatever they want to do while the road clears, they now can continue on after it clears an hour and a half later, and now they're going to have an extended 14-hour too, so they won't run out of hours as far as the 14-hour rule. Thank you. The 30-minute break rule. Currently today we have to take 30 minutes within 8 hours of being on duty. They're now just saying that you don't have to go off duty totally to achieve your 30 minutes. The proposed rule would say you could be loading, you could be on duty not driving, you're sitting at shippers. Drivers are sitting at shippers for 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes all the time. You can achieve your 30-minute off duties, now, or we're trying to say now, as long as you're just not driving. If you're at a shipper, you're on duty not driving for 30 minutes or more, you now have achieved your 30-minute break. And the split duty, this is brand new here, the split duty provision. So we're suggesting that you could have 30 minutes to up to 3 hours break. You can take a 30-minute to a 3-hour break off duty, and it would not work against your 14. So kind of how this slide shows a log here, the old school graph log here. The driver at 10 a.m. goes up into off duty and just kind of takes a break. Who knows what's going on? Maybe nap, who knows what they're doing, but takes a break for 3 hours. Today, if a driver does that, that would work against their 14-hour. They're not doing that. They're not taking those breaks that they might need because they're worried about their 14-hour window. So now you could do that 30 minutes up to 3 hours, and it won't work, and you come back down in driving, and you'll be just basically your 14-hour and your drive time, you're going to be the same spot as when you went up into your break. The only thing you have to make sure you do, this rule would say, is that you have to have, you can't be using like split sleeper with this provision. You have to take a 10 hours off at the end of the day. You have to take a full 10 hours if you're going to use this split duty provision. So 3 hours off won't work against your 14, but the key also then is taking the 10 hours off at the end of the day. A full 10 to reset your clock. And then you could do that again. You can do the same thing again, as long as you take your 10 hours off. The split sleeper berth, what they're proposing here is doing right now you have to do 8 and 2. You have to do 8 and 2. That's the only way you can do a split sleeper right now. They're proposing it where you can do a 7 and 3 break. But what they're also doing, no matter what, if you do a 7 and 3 or an 8 and 2, Currently, when you do an 8 and 2 split sleeper, we don't see a whole lot of split sleeper anymore. Some people still do it though. But if you do it today, the short part of that, the 2 hours, works against your 14-hour window. So you do an 8-hour and a 2-hour, the 2 hours off duty or sleeper, whatever you choose to do, paired with the 8-hour, that 2 hours works against your 14-hour today. Well, the proposed rule would be not the 2 hours or whatever, if you do a 3-hour, doesn't work against your 14. So you can do the 3, you can do the 8 and 2, or you can do 7 and 3, but it won't work against your 14-hour rule at all. The agency's also looking at and taking comments on doing the 6 and 4, even making it more, giving the driver more discretion to making it a 6 and 4 break. Again, these are noticed proposed rules. Our agency takes the comments, and there's already tons of comments. Takes the comments and what the industry says, what law enforcement says, anyone that gives comments takes what they say and will go ahead and adjust it, keep it, throw it out, whatever it may be.
To clarify, so we're proposing a 3-hour break. You can stop at 14, but you got to take a 10-hour at the end.
Yep.
And then on the next slide, we're saying, well, now you can do a 3-7 split, and the 3-hour will stop at 14, but you only have to take 7 at the end. Am I hearing that right?
If you're doing the split sleeper, yeah, right.
But on the other slide, you said if you take a 3-hour in the middle of the day, you can't use a split sleeper.
If you take a 3-hour off duty, you go off duty, not in your sleeper. We're not in your sleeper. We're talking. You would, yeah. You can't be using the split sleeper berth break. You would do a 3-hour off, and you wouldn't have a 7 or anything. You constantly have 10 hours off total for the 3-hour split duty provision rule. I can talk about it off the record with you. We can discuss that, and I'll dig deeper into the actual rule. And I'm just scratching the surface on what they're throwing out there.
Carry on.
I kind of know where you kind of seems contradicting, right?
A little.
Little bit, right. So the docket number here is here. I mean, you guys have the actual the website right there. Here's where you can read all about the proposed rules. The actual comment period got extended to October 21st. So if you do have a comment, or go in there and read them and see what people are thinking or saying about them. Go ahead and I recommend going in there, giving a comment if you have one, or just reading what they're saying there. ELD, anytime I talk, I have to put something in there about an ELD. I've been doing presentations for a long time, and it seems like we've been talking about ELD forever. All I want to do is point just a few quick things about the ELD here. We are right now approaching December 19th of 2019. And that's, if nothing else, I wanted to say about ELD. If there's nothing else I do say, that's really all I wanted to say. If you don't have an electronic logging device, a compliant electronic logging device, and you're required to have one, you're really behind the 8 ball already. But I would recommend you get one, because that is happening as of December 19th, 2019. December 19th, right? Yep, 2019. Everyone will need to have a compliant electronic logging device, no longer AOBRD, any of that. So, and you want to make sure your data, if you have an ELD, make sure your data will transfer. Make sure you know how to transfer if you're ever stopped at the roadside. We have a public website. You guys are probably familiar maybe with the law enforcement uses a system called eRods. It's where your data gets transferred into ours at the roadside, and they can take a look at your hours of service and the whole bit. We have a public website where you can transfer it into eRods. There's a public version of eRods too, and it's very similar. So if you can transfer it to the public version of eRods, it's going to work for law enforcement too. So the biggest thing, make sure you have a compliant ELD. Make sure you guys know how to use it. A common thing that we still have, if there is malfunctions, if there is issues with it, don't just have the driver not using the logbook. I know it seems, it just seems very simple, and the rule is right there as far as paper rods. We need to use paper rods if there's a malfunction, but there's still companies, there's still drivers that get stopped, and so it just stopped working yesterday, I don't have anything. Use paper logs. You can do it for 8 days if it malfunctions. If it's going to keep malfunctioning, if you can't figure it out, apply for a apply for a malfunction extension or a ELD waiver. You do that right through this website. You can apply for it. It'll come right to my office, and we will give you, as long as there's a valid malfunction, as long as you can explain what's going on, we will give you guys an extension. You know, sometimes it's 15 days. It's been up to 30 depending on the size of the company, but usually it's 15 days. If you can't get it figured out by then, you probably should take the truck off the road. But remember, if there's malfunctions, paper logs, you gotta use something.
Do you think that you'll start removing any of your carriers or ELD providers that are listed as approved based on people applying for these
Yep.
extensions?
So every time she wanted to know if we're gonna remove some ELD providers or vendors based on, you know, consistent or constant malfunctions going on with the same provider. Every time a malfunction request comes through the Michigan division, I look at it, I review it with my supervisor, and then after we either give the request or deny it, either way, we log it on a SharePoint through our headquarters is keeping track of. So they're all kept track of all these malfunctions and who the vendors are. So there's already some revoked ELDs that are on our website. There is some of those, but yes, we're keeping track of those. There's the website right there for all kinds of ELD updates. It's where I said where you can do the download, you can upload, or you can download public eRods and then try to upload your data. It's good for you to look at too. It shows exactly how we would see it on the roadside. Frequently asked questions, there we go. Frequently asked questions again. ELD, they're up to, there's like 18 pages of ELD frequently asked questions. And then finally that website right there. If you have any questions that you need answered, this is monitored daily. Please send your ELD questions there. Real quickly, just personal conveyance. I just wanted to touch briefly on the personal conveyance. It's a topic sometimes that's misunderstood. Bottom line is a personal conveyance, we all know, right? It's for personal use. As a motor carrier, your responsibility for personal conveyance is to make sure the drivers are not over hours, make sure they're not abusing hours with personal conveyance. They're not utilizing personal conveyance to position themselves better with a load, not moving across the country while they're out of hours, hauling a load, and then making sure drivers are not fatigued. A driver can use legal personal conveyance, and it can be a great use of it, and it's proper use, but if they're tired and they get in an accident, it's still an accident, and it's still gonna hurt someone. That all comes back to the company. We have to be responsible and know, even if a driver's legally using personal conveyance, are we still putting someone at harm, okay? Quick uses of personal conveyance, some good uses of personal conveyance are time traveling to a nearby reasonable safe location to get rest after loading or unloading. This one, briefly, is if you are at a shipper and you sit there and you run out of hours because you've been sitting there for 2.5 hours and you weren't supposed to be sitting there that long. You should have got out of there in plenty of time. Well, if you run out of hours and you can't stay at the shipper, the driver can go drive down the road and go to the safest, the quickest, the nearest reasonable place to get the rest that they need. Before, drivers would take off and they'd be in violation, but now you can definitely do that. Yep.
Yeah, in reference to personal conveyance, if the driver's at a shipper or a receiver and he runs out of hours, you're telling them rather than go into violation, use personal conveyance.
Yep.
And likewise, if a driver's on the road driving and he runs into conditions that are unpredictable, unforeseeable, be it an accident, whatever the delay is, at that point in time, he's on the road. He's not going to switch to personal conveyance.
Right.
Until he can get to a nearest safe haven if he's going to run. So he's going to go into violation. So his annotation is adequate at that point.
Yeah, and we could be talking about adverse driving conditions too in that case too. We're on the road.
Go into violation and annotate why.
Yep.
With detail.
That's right. And then hopefully he didn't go, annotate. Hopefully it's not a 4-hour window of personal conveyance, because you're gonna find a safe haven before then. But yes, you're right. Yep.
Question.
Should we be doing questions now, or we'd have one at the end? I don't know. What's that?
At the end.
At the end. Okay. save those. I know we got other speakers, just jot that down, and we're gonna do a Q&A at the end, okay?
Okay.
I don't wanna take other people's time here. Okay, moving to CMV at the request of a safety official, personal conveyance, for sure. Time spent traveling while transporting personal property, obviously. Sorry, this mic cutting out on me a little bit. Authorized use to use the CMV to travel home after working to an off-site location. Those are those companies that work off-site, travel back and forth to a hotel. You know, that's personal conveyance, hotel, the job site hotel, that kind of stuff. That's always been personal conveyance and still is. Some quick improper uses. Again, I said it right from the get-go. The movement of a CMV to put the driver, to put the carrier in a better position for their next load. If you drop, the common one we see is a drop a load in Nashville, Tennessee, their next pickup's in Atlanta, Georgia, they start heading south soon as they drop that load, and they log personal conveyance and they take sleeper berth or off-duty 3 hours south of Nashville. That's not personal conveyance, they're empty, it doesn't matter, they're on their way to pick up the next load tomorrow. They're just positioning themselves better. That is not personal conveyance at all. Time spent traveling to a facility for maintenance. If you guys are taking a truck to a facility for maintenance, that is not personal conveyance. Oh, we'll do that. That's not personal conveyance. So if you're taking a truck to a facility for maintenance, it's not going to be personal conveyance. That's commerce. So a lot of times it's your mechanic. So keep that in mind. After being placed out of service, you can't use personal conveyance. You're out of service. You can't use personal conveyance and start and drive somewhere else. There's no safe haven if you're placed out of service. So you're there. Unless if you're placed out at a roadside and a safety official is going to hit the next exit or something like that and get, you're going to drive up there. That's a gray one right there. You're probably going to be driving in violation. But so keep in mind, if you're out of service, there's no your driver, your vehicle is out of service. Cannot use personal conveyance. After you offload at a shipper or you load, even if you're not delivering it till tomorrow, it's not personal conveyance to be traveling back to your location, to your shipper. I offload in Kalamazoo, but I work in Detroit, and I'm empty. When I'm driving back to the yard in Detroit, that's a furtherance of a trip. You're still driving. They're still making that trip, okay? Moving on here real quick, and this is just all I wanted to just touch on here, is that starting actually this year, the entire nation now is not only doing on-site investigations, compliance investigations, but we are doing, and the state counterparts and the FMCSA side, we do off-site investigations. We might reach out to you and say, hey, a lot of them are routine, or you have one of your basic scores is a little bit elevated. We might reach out to you and we might say, hey, we're going to do a little compliance investigation. I want you to send some paperwork over to me. Well, we're now doing them off-site with technology today, and with you guys having the portal access and the capability to upload documents, which takes place during an off-site. That's what we're doing now. We're not going to have to come into your company all the time and make you stop doing what you're doing. We're going to actually do it from our office. You're going to be in your office. You can upload documents at our request with due dates in the evening and the weekends. Whenever you get a chance to do it, you can have someone else doing it for you. Instead of an investigator coming in, sitting down at the table with you and taking 3 days of your life right now and kind of pretty much your job slowing right down or coming to a stop. So there's off-site investigations taking place starting right now. It started actually January of 19, and it's nationwide right now. So just be aware of that. Not all of them are like that. A lot of them are still on-site when we come on to your principal place of business. And then quickly, I just wanted to show that there is, if you guys haven't been aware or haven't noticed, SMS, when you log into your company portal, it has changed. It has updated. We've changed the way it looks. It's more like there's more outreach up top now. There's links. There's quick links to information you can get, to forms you can get, to all kinds of different resources. So we have changed the carrier dashboard. That's just an example of what it looks like during, this is a company that's involved in an off-site review. Those percentages are percentages of documents that have been uploaded that I requested, whether it be driver qualification files, stuff like that, log books, drug testing. As you guys are uploading them, that's your side. That's what that's what we're looking at right there. It shows percentages. Yep, you've uploaded 50% of what you requested, and it just says basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in the real world, if you looked at it, if you guys were involved, it would have the exact basic of what we're talking about, of whatever information we requested. And there's my email that I promised I'd put up there. We're, I think, okay on time right here, but there's my email. Go ahead and write that down if you guys have questions. I know I touched on that really quick, but there's just a lot of information out there. But again, those frequently asked questions for ELD, frequently asked questions for the clearinghouse, look at that. Even if you don't have a question, just look at it and review it. So thank you very much.
Obviously, I'm a Michigan State fan. You have a lengthy bio of mine in front of you. I think it says my name. That's probably good enough, but if you want to jot my email address, just add an M to my last name and go @michigan.gov. I'll give you a very quick background so you know who's talking to you and why I'm talking to you. I've been with the state police almost 25 years, started as a trooper down in Paw Paw, spent time at training as a post commander at Jackson, spent time as the assistant division commander in charge of special operations, and the last 6 years have been honored and privileged to be in charge of commercial motor vehicle division for the Michigan State Police. My highlights by far were taking 24 troopers to Hurricane Sandy for 15 days. Probably one of the coolest details. The thing that I was selected for because of my great looks is I was Tom Izzo's bodyguard for about 10 days at the Final Four in Detroit. So that was a good thing. That probably leans to my green and white blood that you might see oozing in this presentation. I'm excited to be here. I move a lot. I do coach high school football. I'm at the head coach at Okemos High School, if you know where that is. Matt Fabry's from DeWitt, and they beat us this year, so they let him go first. And so I'm not real happy about that. Still upset about that loss. But anyhow, Jordan asked me just to give you an overview of what we do in Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division. Our division is very complex. We do a ton of things. Probably no one in this room thought we regulate water ferries in this state. Probably people don't understand some of the very nuances of our division, what we do. My intent is to give you a quick overview. If you have any technical questions, I brought one of my top guys in the division with me, Sergeant Marcus Studer back here. He also is a sergeant here in Rockford area, so if you have anything direct, Marcus is going to stick after, go through anything you need. If you have any complaints, see him. If you have any compliments, see me. That's the way we like to do it at the division. Let's talk a little bit about our mission and what we believe, and that is just to provide the highest quality commercial vehicle enforcement services in the state of Michigan. If you're not familiar with our officers, they are the ones that drive the Tahoes. They say commercial vehicle enforcement on the side of them, but we want to make sure whatever we do in this state, we do it at the very highest, okay? And then when I look across the country, what is the vision for our officers? We don't have comparables in this state. We're not like troopers. I am the only one in our division that was originally a trooper, if that makes sense to you. But our comparables are Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, all the surrounding states, all the states across this nation that we compete with, if you will, to make sure that we're doing things at the highest level. And my vision for our division is to do it and be a national leader. We just got back from Biloxi, Mississippi for the CVSA conference, and I will tell you, our officers stand out, our programs stand out. The laws that we have in Michigan are really good and in favor for the trucking industry, I think, and I think there's a lot of things we do right here in Michigan. But when I talk about the impact that I want our personnel to have, I want it to be a national leader. I want them to be at the forefront. We'll talk a little about that. How do we accomplish this? It's almost exclusively through the visual, if you will, of our motor carrier officers. The men and women out there every day doing the job. In our division, we right now have 100 motor carrier officers. We are currently about to graduate in December 20 new ones at our academy. So we are a very healthy division of the state police right now. The other thing is if you look at total membership, we have about a total of 195 personnel within the division statewide. Someone asked me, what's our jurisdiction? It's basically the mitten and that thing that hangs up top, the UP, right? So we go all over the state. We work in every county. We work with local sheriffs, road commissions, anyone that we can partner with to make sure the mission of keeping our roads safe is accomplished. because when you look at our division, there are two things that all of our officers should be able to tell you what they do. Number one is keep the road safe. So you will see our officers stopping to fix tires. You'll see them responding to emergencies. You'll see them responding to very serious situations like shootings and things of that nature. But at the same time, they're very keen on the infrastructure within the state. And so the way we position ourselves and use the protecting of our infrastructure is absolutely critical. If you look at Governor Whitmer's platform, fix the darn roads, right? I think she uses a different word, but I use darn. How critical is it that we make sure that we're out there enforcing the weight laws? Because I'm sure everyone's heard that Michigan has the highest gross weight allowance in the nation. It's kind of funny because Wisconsin has to accept a lot of our weight laws with some of the rules now, and they think it's just outrageous, but yet we've been doing it for many years, and it's been successful in Michigan. Talk about a little bit about our goal. Public safety is our goal. As number one thing is that I want everyone in this room to know that when your families are driving down the roads, are you or not you safe in the state? If you look at this graph, now this data is all from different years because some states really lag behind in how they get their data together. In fact, we had to reach back to 2015 on Kentucky. But what you're looking at here, if you can't see it in the back, is we are at an 8.92% fatality rate involving commercial trucks and vehicles in 2017. I will tell you, we have been the leader in this region, which involves about 13 states for the past decade, at least, okay? Ohio, and I always like to pick on Ohio because no one likes the Buckeyes, right? We have friends from Indiana, right? Where's my Indiana folks that came up? Yeah, I mean, Michigan State just beat you guys, so I'm good with you guys staying. So, Ohio has actually made some improvements, but we still beat them by almost 3%, okay? And that is what we average this on. We look at how many crashes occur in the state involving commercial vehicles. It's about 4%, just over 4%. Of those crashes, how many of the fatality crashes, how many involve a commercial vehicle? And so that is that right there. As you look at our partner states that we work with and compete with, you can see we do an excellent job in this area. We do this in several ways, and you know, one of the things that they ask is, how do you decide what to do? How do you send your resources out? What are the things that work to impact things like that? We are very blessed to have UMTRI in the state. That is the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute. And Dr. Dan Blauer was a partner of mine for years at the Truck Safety Commission. And one of the things that UMTRI does is they would research crash results, safety statistics. And what they came up with were several things that every state should have if they want to actually have success at driving down our fatalities. And the one thing was targeted enforcement, okay? They say as a state, you should have specific programs that go out to a section of roadway, section of area based on crashes and data and points of interest where you should really enforce your efforts. And so what we do is several campaigns, and some of them you may have heard of recently. We just did the Targeting Aggressive Cars and Trucks Initiative. This was in June. This was in southeast Michigan on I-94, anywhere from Jackson County all the way into Macomb County. And if you are aware of that campaign, you know it was a blitz to, number one, focus on the cars that are driving recklessly around our trucks, okay? Two, look for trucks that are driving recklessly around other vehicles. And number three, get that word out so all drivers understand the stopping distances, the things that are unique about commercial vehicles and the way that they handle in certain situations. So we do a lot of these initiatives. We do Towards Zero Deaths. This is one we started back in 1994, where our officers go out, and again, how do we decide where to go? We take a map. We have data that shows that I-94 between Pawpaw, exit 60 and exit 48 is prone in the winter, and so we set campaigns exactly for that. If you've ever heard of Eyes on 94, that was our division's response after we had the horrible pileups on I-94. I think it was back in 2014. We started that initiative, and every December, you'll see it again this year, not only us, but Indiana State Police, Ohio Highway Patrol, Illinois State Police, all get engaged and focus on an area of highway that they saturate. And we will put up to about 50 officers on I-94 for that entire week. So if you're driving there, heads up. All right, and we always announce those. It's not a surprise. We want people to be safe on these roadways. We do STET operations. STET is simply an acronym that stands for Specialized Truck Enforcement Teams. We set up at rest areas, we set up at safe cutout sites, we'll set up at different locations where we'll bring trucks and different vehicles in for operations. And again, as part of UMTRE's recommendation for a successful program, those are the things that they recommend. And then we also always do multi-state initiatives. To think that commercial traffic can be handled just by one state is really silly. When you look at 10,000 trucks a day coming into our state at Monroe alone, about another 6,000, 6 to 8,000 a day coming in at New Buffalo, to think that we can impact all of those, we rely on all 4 of these neighboring states. And I could have thrown Wisconsin up there because we do operations up in the UP with Wisconsin as well. But primarily, we have what are called quad state initiatives where we're focusing on those corridors. And it involves a lot of different things. Sometimes it involves after hours stuff, weekends, Saturday nights when trucking is not typically doing business. We'll show up all of a sudden on certain holidays. We'll show up at certain different times based on our data, our trends, things that we're trying to make sure that we stay on top of. In the UP, it's a little different. We work with Wisconsin. Typically, those concerns are on joint border operations, where we work down near the power scale, if you're familiar with that location, but have had great success in bringing agencies together to fight the same common concern, and that is safety. Okay, and so we go do many of those. Let's talk about our activity levels. If you look at our activity, and you can see we stop about 80,000 vehicles a year. We do about 52,000 inspections. This year we're going to be right at around 52,000 again. We screened over 2.4 million vehicles last year. That means vehicles that traveled over one of our scale locations. And then we actually weighed using portable scales or a platform about 11,000 vehicles, issuing about 36,000 citations. About 6,600 of those were for weight violations in the state. The thing that you don't see, and that I'm most proud of, and if anyone knows me or has been around me for the last 6 years, you know I've tried to change the culture within our division. I always tell people that don't ever forget what it was like when you were stopped, and always do 3 things. Do what's right, do your best, and treat others the way you want to be treated. And I hold my officers accountable to that, okay? And where does that come from? That comes from, number 1, being a kid, being stopped by troopers and things like that. The fear of, you know, of being put to death when your dad found out you got a ticket or whatever. But number 2 is my father-in-law was actually a self-employed contractor driving a truck, hauling equipment to site, and he used to call us the MPSC. And when he found out that I was the head MPSC man now, as he calls me, he couldn't believe it, because I used to be his enemy, if anyone can relate to that, okay? But things like that, attitudes like that, are why we have to change the way we think about industry. And so now today, when our recruits go through their training, they learn how to do all this stuff. But they also go out and visit Jim Berg Trucking for 3 days. They also go out and see what industry's concerns are. And they understand that they're dealing with professional drivers in a professional business, not necessarily what I was used to dealing with, which is some of the worst people in society on a routine basis as a trooper. It's different. And we try to explain that to them. And so you don't see it up here, but you see 36,000 citations. We average about 39,000 verbal warnings. That means over half the time we're letting people go. Just saying, hey, we stopped you, you have this issue going on. Just make sure you get that taken care of, and I'll give you a warning this time. All right? Because, again, my objective is to partner. My objective is to change behavior. And writing a citation or something of that nature doesn't solve that. And the thing that really bothers me the most is there are certain agencies that I'm aware of that will inspect your truck, find 5 violations for brakes, and write 5 tickets. That, if that comes across my desk and I'm aware of it, I have a real problem with that. You can get 1 out of 5. That's what I would expect, no less, or no more, excuse me. But I know of certain places that do that, and again, why am I passionate about that? It's the right thing to do. It's the way I would want to be treated. Okay, and again, our funding, if anyone's not aware, everything that we do funding-wise goes back into our state libraries. It's not like there is a benefit for our officers to do any of that for financial. Couple of the things that we're in this phase right now, along with our enforcement efforts, is that UMTRI says that you should always encourage deployment of truck safety technologies. One of the things that we work with are WWIMs, wireless weigh in motion sites across the state. Basically what that means is that there are sites along the concrete that our officers can get a readout of your weight as you drive down the freeway at freeway speeds. And we're well aware of how that goes and who does it. They're usually a little box in the road. If you look at the picture on the left here, it's just this little box on the sideway that comes out into the freeway, and then we'll usually weigh them out at this location, which is what we call a cutout at one of our safe enforcement sites or at a rest area, and you'll see those occasionally. We participate in any type and anyone that wants to come to the state to help move commerce. In other words, I allow pre-pass and driveways to both work at our facilities. Now, my thing about this is I always want them not to burden our officers and that we have to have control, meaning just because you signed up for pre-pass doesn't mean you get a free pass every time. We will do random checks. We will turn it off. We will set the pull-in rate. Right now it's only at like 5%, okay? But if there's any ever hunches or problems or things that I want to change up, we can set it up to 50%. So if you participate with pre-pass or driveways, you come by one of our scales, you might get pulled in just because we changed the reading, okay? But I think it's imperative that we work, again, with industry, and if this is something that benefits the industry, then I don't want to be a person that's going to stand in the way of it, okay? Because it doesn't compromise safety and it actually benefits our officers when it comes to screening. We do a ton of public information. You see the Center for Truck Safety out here. We work very closely with them. We do all kinds of driving ads. We work for different promotional activities through that and try to spread the word about public safety. And then we have obviously our weigh stations, which are probably the most visible. And if you look at this map, we have 15 sites in the state where we currently operate. At any given time, some of those may be up or they may be down depending on construction. If you're from this area, you obviously know Ionia. Westbound has just been completed. We will have a formal grand opening of that in about 2 weeks, but that has been up and running and is just a modern site. And then what UMTRI also says is that you should always try to look at where the crash cost is and then overlap your inspections with it. So this is the most recent map of where all the commercial vehicle crash costs occur. It's no surprise that you see the metro region of Metro Detroit, the Grand Rapids region, of having the highest crashes, the highest costs. It's also no surprise if you look at the colors where most of our focus is. We absolutely go out and aggressively try to go to those areas where we know we're having some problems. Now you will see things like Niles, Monroe. If you look on the map upstairs at the UP at the Mackinac Bridge, we also know that our international borders are very important to the state, and our state borders are. So we concentrate our officers at all ports of entry for things coming into the state. Everyone's probably familiar with our inspections. We do that through inspections and our weigh stations. This is our a view of our just completed Ionia scale. And again, that is where it is now. Next May, you will, probably next March, you will see a high-speed bypass lane going in there next. A lane that will allow you to go by that scale at roughly 30 to 40 miles an hour. And it'll actually be built right alongside the static deck, and we're in the works of getting that started in the spring. So Ionia westbound will be becoming a full modernized scale, as we would term it, with a high-speed bypass lane. The other thing we're doing, and this is something Ohio does not have, very proud of that, we are now moving forward with smart roadside technology. What that means is basically when your truck will come into a weigh station, we will have already read its US DOT number. We will already have read your US, your license plate. We will have checked about 12 to 15 databases against your credentials, and then we will determine if anything is not up to standard, okay? We have 2 of those systems coming in. They look basically like this. We're going to look at the brakes as they go by with infrared sensors, and as they go by, we will get a readout and come on into our weigh station. And then we have virtual weigh stations. Has anyone been to the Mackinac Bridge? Everyone, right? Most everyone. On both sides of that bridge, we have for several years now operated camera systems that weigh every truck that goes over it, that takes a video image of that truck, and that sends a readout to any officer. So literally, we could have an officer in Gaylord, almost 40 miles away downstream, 50 miles away, and they're going to see a truck cross the bridge southbound, and the chances are that it's coming into Gaylord are very high, and they'll be able to see that that's already an overweight truck. It will have a picture, it will have the weight on it, and it will have everything that our officers need to find that vehicle, okay, and make we call a probable cause stop. So that's already there. These are going to be more prevalent as technology increases. You will see them at bypass lanes. We have certain pockets of the state where we know commercial traffic bypasses scales when we're open, and you'll start to see little things like this on the sides, and I'll show a picture to our officers in the scale, and it'll be a real easy connection with what we're doing, okay? Coming probably in the spring is this system. Probably one of the most impressive systems I've ever seen. It will get a digital printout of every tire on an 18-wheeler and tell us if it's flat, if it's got an abnormality to it, or anything else that's going to cause it to be out of alignment or adjustment. It imprints the tires as they roll across. It does it at freeway speeds. And I will tell you, the Illinois State Police has got about 4 of these running. They've ordered a total of 14 more. We will be looking to pilot one here at New Buffalo next spring, and it's unbelievable technology as far as what it does. And if you think about this, you think, you know, what's my main goal? Safety and public infrastructure. Think about how many sheds of tire you see going down the road. How many retreads are blown off? How many have been next to a tire when that thing's blown? When you look at the statistics of mechanical causation of track crashes, tires is always the one that leads the area. Okay, so you talk about having an impact. We're going to run a pilot on this in March, and then we'll probably be looking at these spread out much more across the state. So those are coming. I talked about weighing motions, talked about some overweight fines and stuff. I don't want to get into a whole lot of this. In fact, that's kind of why I asked Marcus to come, is that if you have any specific questions when we get into technical fine structures or violations, he'll be able to stay after and talk to you about that. But I will tell you, the weight issue is not going away in this state. You know, some recent ones, we had, 108,000 pounds. He was over 28,000 pounds. This is back in May. 2 days later, the same officer stopped another vehicle coming from Canada, 132,500 pounds, almost 33,000 pounds overweight. Very damaging when we have those type of things, because those vehicles typically are not equipped to handle that. We have some things called, and I'm just, like I said, this is a very broad overview, but we have hometown security teams. This is, if you've ever seen a bunch of patrol cars out on the freeway in one area, and then a commercial vehicle car with them, that's probably our HST team. They are looking for the bad actors within the industry. Okay, and to give an example, last month we knocked off $470,000 of cash of a guy running money for a drug unit, okay, through the city of Detroit and trying to get out of the state. We are actively engaged in hometown security. We're actively engaged in looking for those people that choose to do some of the worst things that we have, and so we're constantly out there looking for drugs, narcotics. Opioids, obviously a huge issue these days, and large sums of cash. We do motor coach enforcement. We do border enforcement at all of our borders. We do radiological inspections. People don't realize this. You know, it was one of the things that if we would have had a government shutdown, we would have had a radiological shipment coming in today from the Blue Water Bridge, and we do about 65 of those a year that come into our state. Not many people know about it, but our officers go out, check them for any leaks, check them for security and all of those things. We do new entrant safety audits. We do compliance reviews. I think Matt talked about that. We inspect our school buses every single year. This was just our numbers from last year that you have, if you're interested in when that came from. Basically, 78% of the buses out there passed clear. 15% were in violation of something that they could not operate that until it was fixed. It's kind of a high number. And then 6% had something that just had to be fixed within the next 60 days. And how do we know it gets fixed? We go back. We inspect them. We say, dear Mr. School Bus Driver, the safety manager of the school bus or the transportation department of the schools. We get a list. If they're out of service, they get a red sticker on them. They cannot be moved until it's fixed, and then we come back and see it, okay, and physically know that that has been corrected for our kids. And the same thing with the yellow tags. I'm going to end with this because this is probably the thing I'm most proud of. Aside from all my members that do unbelievable work. Human trafficking in Michigan, you've heard about it a long time. When I took over in 2013, I had a young lady from Truckers Against Trafficking do a presentation at the Amway Grand, and I had met to meet with her. Candace Paris was her name. I'd already set up a meeting because I'd heard about this program from a good buddy of mine in Iowa, and she put up a map in that conference that showed every state that participated in Truckers Against Trafficking, and we were not one of them. Talk about embarrassment. Your home state, and you are a state that does not participate or support that. And here I am, a father of 4 kids and 2 daughters, thinking, man, that hit me. And it hit me when the lead story of their program shows 2 teenage girls that were kidnapped in Toledo and then rescued 5 months later after horrific experiences in Dexter, Michigan. Okay? That was right after I was the post commander down there. And here I'm thinking, how does this happen? We got to do something about it. If you look at this map, if you just look at Michigan, you will see the increase. It goes from 2014, the big map kind of shows you the heat map where we've had calls, 2015, 2016. Does that mean that human trafficking is just exploding in the state? No. It means we're more aware. It means now we're getting more calls. Now the police are making more responses to this. Okay, and so it's been a great success for us. And if you look at this, we were the 2nd state in the nation behind Iowa to fully adopt what's called the Iowa model. That means that we are in every rest area, every Secretary of State's office, every officer in my division got trained, every civilian got trained. We went out to every rest area, truck stop, business owner involved in trucking and offered this training. We did that in about 4 months. And I promise we'll never let that go. So I'm very proud of this, very proud that Ohio got on board after us because of what we did, very proud of Florida's coming on board because of us, Georgia, Tennessee, and Washington State because of the model that our officers put together to address this problem. And if you're not familiar with that, there's the hotline, here are the stickers. If you need any materials at all on this, I'd be more than happy to get those for you. That was fast. That was quick. There's a million things I could ever move on and talk about. Is there anything specific related to division, policy, direction, overview of the state of where we're going in Michigan? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any involvement in driver training for the younger generation?
Within our driver training within the state police, we do. Within CVED, my division, we do have programs that we'll put on at local schools or whatnot. But as far as hands-on driver's training, we actually have classes that students can now take. I'll tell you a real quick story because I'm glad you asked. Keisha McDonald, this young lady was killed back in about 2005 in Lake Odessa. When we did some research, I was over training in charge of the drive track. We learned that we had 23 deaths in 6 counties in West Michigan. Dave Gradanis was the post commander at Wayland at the time. He brought that problem to my attention. He says, we got to do something about it. We put together a 1-day teen driving school. And you think 1 day, it's 7 hours of driving with a trooper. And these kids go through this in the summer, and it's like nothing they've ever experienced. They literally go through serpentine, skid control, coming off a curb, re-entering the roadway. They go through deflated tire exercises to show that if you're operating your car with 20 pounds of pressure and you need to make an evasive maneuver, you're not going to be very successful. So we put that together, and that runs for about 2 weeks in the summer if you're interested. msp.gov/ or michigan.gov/MSP, just look for teen drivers. Great question. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Your officer's ability to come to company meetings, like we had all of our truck drivers together, to speak, answer questions, that type of thing.
Love it. Please, if you have any needs in your industry, at your company, Marcus just got back. I think Marcus went to Granger with a couple of folks over in Lansing, and all they wanted was to review what they do. This is not enforcement. This is not an official safety audit. If we can come out and do a safety presentation, if we can come out and walk you through an inspection, if we can come out and educate you anyway, that's a win for us. Because I'd much rather see your company, your drivers there than pulled over out of service on the side of the road because it's something that we could have caught just by having some routine maintenance. So again, if you want to send me those emails, KRUMMM, 3 M's, at michigan.gov, I will be happy to get someone out to your business, okay? Happy to get someone out there to work with you, whatever your needs are, and we will tailor those. If you want someone to come out and teach your company on Truckers Against Trafficking, it's a 1-hour awareness video, not a video. It's a 1-hour awareness training that our officers will come out. We've got about 15 coordinators statewide that will go to any business, any school, anyone that asks for it, and make sure you get that training. Great question. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
We're an intermodal provider, so our biggest struggle is maintenance. We don't own the equipment. With the technology and the tires that I'm seeing here, will any of those violations start being attributed to the provider versus the carrier?
That is a very,
Take the pressure off the drivers to make sure they're doing good inspections, but.
right. Well, obviously, when you take control of a vehicle, you have to be responsible for the vehicle. Courts have always wanted us to cite a driver over a company or over a carrier. So that's kind of the guidance we've gone. I don't know if you'll see a change in that. I don't think you will, because otherwise we have no way of follow through with that. Anything else? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate having this opportunity. I have to leave. I am sorry. State budget stuff is going on, and a lot involves my division right now. I have to get back, but Marcus is going to stay here. He is one of my top guys as far as CVSA questions. He's a CVSA instructor. He's got about, Marcus, you had 18 years now? I was his recruit school commander, so I just get older when I look at him. So, Marcus, you are in good hands if you have any questions, and you have my number, so if there's anything we can do, send me an email. We'd love to come out and work with you and partner with your companies. So, thanks again, Jordan, for having me.